success is like seeing that sparkle come back in someone's eyes, is bringing forth their passion, their inspiration, their motivation, and what that I is that they're here to pass on. So I love that we're bringing forth other leaders. We're bringing forth passion and that energy that's inside each and every one of us. And for high achievers, I find they're like natural born leaders. They're people that know that there's something more, that they want to do better, they want to evolve, they want to create the best possible life, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them, and become a living legacy, truly.
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders, take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment and feel the beat within. In a few seconds, you just jumped from your head to your heart and felt the beat within, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life. And today's episode. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, confidant to successful CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Welcome to the Everlasting Fulfillment Podcast with our next guest, Jennifer Regular, that was wrong. Jennifer is passionate about guiding individuals and organizations towards their highest potential and purpose. With a unique blend of spirituality, modern wisdom, and practical guidance. She specializes in conscious leadership, personal development, and fostering a meaningful connection that amplify impact. As the founder of Lighting the Path, Jennifer is committed to facilitating conscious evolution and collective empowerment, paving the way for individuals and business to align their vision, values, and mission with sustainable growth and well-being. Those are some wonderful words there, Jennifer. Welcome to the show, and tell us who you are. What we know a little bit about you do, but be a little bit more specific. Give us an example. What do you do with people?
Yeah, thank you so much, Nico. It's really wonderful to be here. What do I do? Yeah, I am here on this earth and I've been trying for years to figure that out and taking different forms and ways on the path, which I found out is not linear. Took many pivots along the way. And essentially what I do is guide the destiny of souls into their most empowered way of being to help high achievers, especially who are having high impact or want to serve a higher purpose. And so it's living the high life, really. And moving them through that portal and recognizing that, a business could be a vehicle for fulfilling our purpose and that a business can actually become a movement if you're really aligned with who you are, what you're meant to do, and that you're leading with passion. Because the way I see passion, Nico, is when you break up the word, it's pass I on. That I is your soul's expression of what you're here to pass on in this lifetime. So that's what I work towards bringing about and facilitating.
Okay, well, that's a nice analysis or split of that one word that we use so much. Mm-hmm. It's the same way I use fulfillment. It's like fulfillment, where you just say, really feel the full story of what you're doing, and instead of rat race and just continuing every day without thinking about what you're doing. No, that's very important. And you're talking about high achievers. How do you see high achievers? What kind of people do you meet?
The people that I meet are really passionate about what they do. They really are dedicated and committed to making a real difference. And what I find is that it's not even so much about our individual missions anymore. It's about collective transformation and our collective mission to be able to do that. And it's interesting because prior to us coming on together here for the podcast, I was curious about the etymology of what leader or leadership is. And so I looked it up, and lidere was an Old English word that meant to guide and bring forth. And I love that so much because that really speaks to my perspective on leadership. And for visionaries, that really comes through the energy and passion that we have. So those high achievers are ones that have a big vision, but are actually living out their vision, going on that journey, creating that movement and momentum along the way, also learning how to sustain their well-being in the process, because it is that
Mhm.
energy and passion. And if that goes, then our whole impact and ability goes. Even if we're achieving and accomplishing things, that energy and passion is what has the impact. So it's not just about accomplishing some kind of goal or having an achievement where you win an award, and that's all wonderful, of course, and that's reinforces that we're on the right path and we're having that kind of success. But to have the impact, like even for me, Nico, success is like seeing that sparkle come back in someone's eyes, is bringing forth their passion, their inspiration, their motivation and what that I is that they're here to pass on. So I love that we're bringing forth other leaders. We're bringing forth passion and that energy that's inside each and every one of us. And for high achievers, I find they're like natural born leaders. They're people that know that there's something more, that they want to do better. They want to evolve. They want to create the best possible life, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. And become a living legacy, truly.
I love the word that you brought. The last word you just said, legacy. It's
Mm,
it's very important for me personally, but indeed, it's also the word that I see happening around a lot of the high achievers that I meet. The C levels and founders who've done the story or the path of building a business and growing their income and so on, but
mhm,
not in essence to enrich only themselves, but also to
mhm.
make the opportunity towards everybody that work for them or work with them. And
Yes.
I've always strived to work in the same way where I thought if I can do one job and make it possible for four other people to do a job for me, helping me in that one thing, then I'm feeding four families. I'm actually
Mhm.
feeding five families with
Mm,
myself included. And I've grown to a point where I want to do this more and more at a distance instead of just the people around me, but
mhm.
making an impact on I don't know, some organization that is out there who's helping the needy and who are
Yeah.
needy, not the needy, the needing. Uh, there is a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. There is.
Actually, and indeed, it's like you say, the whole thing about leadership. I love leadership in a very specific way. And I've always loved it when it's not sitting on the carriage that's being pulled by the horses or standing in front of the horses, pulling the horses towards the destination, but standing between them and enjoying the whole story of the activity as well as guiding them. And that's what,
Yeah.
for me, that's the reason why leadership is something that resonates as much, especially with me. And in your own story, how did you come to the point to start doing this? Because there was a Jennifer in the past and there'll probably some Jennifer in the future, but the
Yes.
Jennifer now, how did you get where you are right
By following my intuitive guidance, by following my soul's calling,
now?
and to stop trying to conform because I was trying to do the leadership thing through other organizations and through other people's idea of what they wanted for themselves and helping them to fulfill their vision. And finding that I felt constricted in that or restricted in some ways, and that I couldn't really unleash that entrepreneurial spirit. And so, I would go off to the side and just sort of explore how I might be able to do that on my own. And what I found was that every time I made a decision to take a next step forward or explore something different, then there were new people I would meet and new resources that would come in, like maybe books or courses or webinars or an interesting idea that came forth. And I found that when I followed what I love to do, and we can think of love as an acronym too for lots of vital energy, because that's the feeling and experience that comes through when you love what you do, and that love shines through everything you do. And so one of the things I noticed working for other people and trying to be in a leadership role is I didn't always have the right conditions to grow and thrive. Some of those mission statements that the organizations had, I loved and felt aligned with. And that's why I chose to work with that organization, because of those shared values. However, time and time again, I'll say 16 times during that career, I
Okay.
changed a lot. Like I mentioned, there's been a lot of pivots because I'd reached this plateau and I need to go somewhere else and work with maybe a different clientele or population, depending on what type of work it was. And it's good on paper, right? You have your pillars, you have your vision statement, your mission statement, and then that's it. You kind of forget about it because you get caught up in the hustle and the daily grind and meeting quotas and trying for certain achievements or success points or milestones, that you forget your why, the impact you want to have. It became more of a role to role way of relating rather than soul to soul, which is really what calls to me for. I tend to be very heart centered, very client
Hmm.
centered. And when we're trying to conform to something, there's several misalignments that happen and takes us out of sync. And so instead of that harmony and being in alignment with your truth and with the vision and the mission and embodying leadership and your values, you and the company and your team and all that you're working with, right? If that's not in alignment, then it becomes more of a struggle. And then you start striving and then you get into the hustle and then everything comes out of balance, out of alignment. And then you don't have the kind of impact you have. You don't get that fulfillment. And we talk a lot about flow. So Nico, what is flow without the F?
Yeah, that's pretty low stuff. Yeah.
Low, exactly. Then
Indeed.
you're feeling low, you have that low
Yeah.
energy, you have the um, obligation rather than passion. You just feel like depressed and anxious and angry or getting into conflict, or you have low connection with your family because you're working 14 hours a day, 7 days, 6 or 7 days a week, right?
Mhm.
So what's that F that's missing? Quite often it's fulfillment. It could also be
That's the first thing
fun.
I thought.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
could be fun. It could be faith. It could be like that trust in what's going on. In faith, I love acronyms, Nico. So I'll give you one for faith. And that's finding answers in the heart. We start going for external measures and metrics, then we forget to look for the answers in the heart, which leads to the fulfillment and having that trust, fortitude, right? That resilience and that the well-being financially, mentally, spiritually, physically, socially, even having enough time to rest, right? You might have millions of dollars in your account, but you lack in other areas of your life, then things are out of balance, right? There's too much focus in one area. That's another F. Maybe something's out of focus. So if you're
Mhm.
feeling low and not in the flow, then think about what might be missing. What's the F that you need to get back into the flow? And so I don't even know how I got onto the track, Nico. Take me back.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. No, the acronyms is something that I've been living with a long time. Even now, where I'm working in a location, they love their acronyms. They even got. I think the book is this thick with all the acronyms, and I think you find some words are used 3 or 4 times. But I myself I used to have a service that was called "Choose Grit to Grow a Smarter Life," and so choose was the only full word, and the two as well. Yeah. Choose,
Mm,
two, and A were the only full words. All the rest were acronyms. And basically what it came down to was a classic thing where grit was called, it was grow, reality, innovation, transformation. That was grit. And then grow came out of the classic coaching world. The G for goals, R for what was it called? Well, all the acronyms. And then smart
yeah.
is comes from smarter, and I called it smarter because I said emotion and revision was necessary.
Yes,
It's a
absolutely.
continuous cycle. So
Mm-hmm.
I made this acronym. It's actually still on the side of my car, and I don't use the service anymore, but it's still in my mind, and I lose tidbits. But when you're talking about flow, to my mind, and a lot of people talk about balance, work life balance, where I see, indeed, flow is a lot more prevalent as well as synchronicity, where you find all the different parts, and financially you could be, skyrocketing, but emotionally you might be the downs and the dumps. And
Yeah.
that's the difference is too high towards that synchronicity, so that
Mm-hmm.
flow can start. Because what is flow to me? It's actually saying it's a river. It's what a
Mm-hmm.
river does.
Mm-hmm.
It hits a rock and it'll go around it. And if it flows around it long enough, the rock, gets smaller, 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 it turns into a pebble, and it actually is pulled with the water. So those
Oh, okay.
conflicts or those things that have been in your past as big rocks, big boulders. Thinking about the Big Bang Theory, very funny. Where or you have this big boulder where Indiana Jones, for instance, runs away from the boulder, but it gets shrunk down by the water to a pebble, and then I love that piece of looking at that way, because then you can say down the stream, when you've been in that flow, you can look back and the boulder is no longer a boulder, it's actually a pebble, because that's
Mm.
usually what happens with us. Something major goes on in our life, but when you look back at it after like 10 years, it looks like, was that the only thing I was doing? The realization is
Ah,
completely different. That's why I
uh-huh.
love changing that perspective a little bit. Made it a little bit complicated, I know, but the people who work with me understand what I mean, so that's fine.
Oh,
But
yeah, I try.
so, in your own story, how
Mhm.
did you find any challenges? Because if you're saying 16, I think I've also had about the same amount of different jobs, and within jobs, changing functions and stuff like that.
Yes,
So,
right.
or positions, you kind of flow around all over the place, but it's all the experience that's within that. Is there anything specific that happened in your life that really, maybe you hit the wall or anything like that?
Yeah, I hit the wall, I think mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, suffering from compassion fatigue, adrenal fatigue, and just becoming disillusioned by the organizations and systems who, seem so great on paper, for example, but then wasn't living that out in reality. And so I became really interested and curious about how can we stay in alignment with our mission and our values? How do we stay in alignment with our why and that higher impact that we want to have? Because when I found that I wasn't being myself. I wasn't being a full expression of myself because I was conforming to legislation or compliance or something like that, for example. I didn't necessarily agree with, but did anyway. And there's a couple of things that I've since realized about conforming is that it's also performing, right? So
Mhm, mhm.
acting out a certain thing. And this is where we get caught up in the loop of performance and productivity. And we say we want to prioritize health and well being, but we're still always prioritizing productivity and performance, right? If we're going to be fully transparent. The other thing about conform that I just thought about actually came to me while you were talking is it's conform, which goes against our form, goes against our true nature and who we truly are. And so when I was trying the different places and ways of working, I guess I was looking for how it can properly take shape, how I can do that work, but do it in the best possible way where I get to share my energy and passion for things and see the impact that that was having. So it really took me on a quest to figure out what that was. Like first I had to deal with that compassion fatigue, the burnout, adrenal, the disillusionment. And so when I mentioned earlier about energy and passion, I had to look for ways that inspired me again and that helped me manage my energy better, that helped me realize how much I get impacted by the environment, the conditions, way of being even just in the office building, just all of the ways that can either help us thrive or where we're just struggling to survive. So I got into energy work at first and was into the healing arts for quite a while. I discovered integrated energy therapy, which really helped me understand how there's different emotions that correlate with different areas of our body. And I also got into shamanism because I recognize how much of our issues in our tissues, right? And in the
Yeah.
world and in our business work, like every part of life really reflects on soul and how certain ways of leadership also come about, because not all leaders really about leadership, right?
Hmm.
They're not all
Hmm.
about guiding and bringing forth. They're not all about bringing out the best in others. They're looking for followers. You have the type of leaders that will light the fire in you. They'll have the type of leaders that light the fire under you, right? To get you going. It's more about dictatorship than evolving, right? And then there's the kind of leaders that the or light the light in front of you and kind of lead the way and show the way and just kind of hold that for you so that you can step forward. So creating those right conditions. So that's what I was looking to do. What kind of conditions do we really need to thrive? What conditions do I need to thrive? And then making sure I create that in my life and in my working through boundaries or agreements that I needed in place, and what my values truly were, what were like my top 3, for example, and how was I living that? And that would guide my choices and being able to do that. And I found the more that I was living my truth, the more I felt in balance. So now I say that balance is really living your truth, because anytime you're not, then you're out of balance. You're in that place of misalignment again. And so once I was able to really free my spirit to direct the life that I was meant to live, that's when I found that freedom and fulfillment and autonomy and integrity in my values and in spirituality. I'm really strong in spirituality because when you ask me who I am and what I do, we can think of ourselves as spiritual beings having the human experience. So doesn't it make sense then to take care of our spirit first, to engage in spiritual wellness so that we can be inspiring role models of the light? I'm going to give you a few more acronyms here. Can I do that?
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Because light can be an acronym for living in God's highest truth. And so I speak of God as God of your understanding, or good orderly direction, if you prefer. And there's the leaders that I've experienced that work more from ego, which is edging God out. And there's ones that I say connect soul to soul and heart to heart, and really want to foster a creative environment, a team environment, bring out the best in their people so that they can have the high impact and serve the higher purpose that's aligned with the vision and values and mission of the organization or the business. And soul is about sending out universal love. So there's the few acronyms that I said I'd bring more to you. And when we're sending out that universal love, then that's the eye that we're there to pass on. That's the energy and passion that comes through no matter what we're doing, that actually comes through. For example, like I love the story that Jack Canfield shared about Johnny the Bagger. And if I can just share that briefly too, Nico, because I think it really speaks not just my story, but another story of what might seem like a very mundane job can still have great impact because of who you get to express through that work, right? About who you are. So Johnny the Bagger, have you heard this story before, Nico?
No, I haven't. No.
No.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So he really was a bagger. He bagged groceries. So he's at the grocery store, end of the aisle, packing up people's groceries. And at the grocery store, people are coming in and they just want to get in and out. They don't want to be standing in line. And I mean, nowadays, people order online or they get it delivered. And, this is decades ago that we're talking about now. But so Johnny would have these little affirmations that he would handwrite and put into people's bags as they were going through. And this caught on. People really felt impacted by that. It had a ripple effect. It was a feel good feeling, and that's the thing. Like, we always remember how we felt, right? And that's the impact right there. That's the connection and the joy and the remembrance of how we are in this place of oneness and love and joy. And so easy to just skip over that. Anyway, this caught on, and when you know it, that people started lining up in the same the same checkout that Johnny was in, because people wanted these affirmations. They were that hungry for it. They were yearning for it. They were willing to stand in line and just wait, just so that they can receive this. And all he was doing was bagging groceries. But is that really all he was doing? I've crossed people on the streets that are without shelter, and they have like the biggest smile that just lights you up when you walk by.
Yeah,
It
I
can be as
understand what you
simple as
mean.
that. Yeah, simple as
Yeah,
that to have
but
impact.
it's kind of the same thing where you just walk through a village. My village is
Mm,
I live in a small village, and even in big cities, I spent some time in New York, and I was one of the oddballs saying good morning to everybody I met on the way to the office, and I kind of lost my voice halfway because there were so many people I met, and I was always saying good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and then
yeah.
the amount of people that did not react was amazing,
Hmm.
but the amount of people that were astonished was even more amazing because they were not used to it. And within our
Hmm.
village, there's a lot of people who know each other, but I'm still kind of an oddball in this village because I came to live here together with my wife. And I walk through the village, and even though all these people are strangers to me, I say hello to them. And there's some of them that are sometimes a little bit baffled. And I've made a kind of an agreement with my wife where we said, there's just needs to be one person who did not get a good morning, but that good morning or hello that we give them might light up their day for just a few seconds, and they might feel better. And it's all these little things that are so much more impactful than, building something big is also impact. Absolutely. But it's the little things that really hit everybody that you meet. And it's like you said, people don't remember what you did for them. People remember how you made them feel. And that's one of the things that I love doing is either making people feel awkward or humorous or astonished of what I'm going to say. But that's the thing, I love that because it's the impact that you have, and making somebody smile. For me, it's golden. Some people tell me I need to be a comedian sometimes. I don't really, it's kind of a thing that I'm not sure about. But anyway, but yeah, it's there's so many little things happening in the world that nobody sees but have such a big impact. And one of the things that I've learned in the past, I've gone through very dark times.
Mhm.
It is those things that actually gave me purpose to move forward. And it's still the same with, for instance, this podcast. I meet so many people on this podcast, and there's so many different kind of people, but it's so much fun because you get a completely different perspective, and you
Uh-huh.
give an opportunity to be, present and visible and all that wonderful stuff. But it's enjoying the conversation and just having that conversation. That's why
Yes.
I love, my second pillar is deep connection. I
Hmm.
don't talk to people because I just want to talk. I'm not talking about the weather. I will not talk about the weather. It's just out there. That's the only thing that we cannot control. Maybe, and time. Yeah, those two things. But but you don't talk about things that you can't control because it doesn't have any impact. Talk about things
Mhm.
that really have impact. And when you
Mhm.
mentioned the G word, for me, the G word, God,
Mm.
is
Okay.
something that comes up a lot within the
Mhm.
conversations that I have.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
am a spiritual person,
Mhm.
as in I have a very practical vision on spirituality. I mentioned this in another podcast this week. I think last week I was a guest there, and she was asking me, what are the techniques that you've learned as in your coaching? And I talked about tarot, which are, divination cards. Oh my God,
Mhm.
it's going to
Mhm.
tell the future. No, not at all. On the contrary, they make me come into the present. Because one of
Yeah.
those things that I've learned, and I've joined a couple of organizations that really teach you the depth and of the symbology and all of that, and it's
Mhm.
it's invigorating. It's really so interesting because it has so many different layers. And then I studied it for 6 years, and a lot of people didn't even know that I was studying it because I never brought them up. And after 6 years, one of the guides that I had told me, okay, and now, so you studied them in black and white and you made them in color. So you had to color them in yourself just to make sure that you saw all the details. And he said, okay, now take a picture of them and make them, how do you reverse an image into the different colors where
Mm.
you just swap out the colors and then it becomes a lot of more, rainbowy. Can't remember negative. You make a negative out of
Oh,
them.
okay.
That's the
Okay.
word we're
Yeah.
looking for. You make a negative out of them and then look at them again for X amount of time a day and tell me what you see. And these are things that you cannot describe because you bring out stuff that comes from within. Nobody's telling you these things. Somebody at some point drew an image on a little card, and it activates something within your mind
Mhm.
that shows you either your path or what you're thinking about or anything like that. And that's so enriching. And it's all these little details, and that's what I love about the things that comes down to guiding people.
Mhm.
When you look at somebody and you start looking at somebody in detail, in the
Mhm.
way they look at you, in the way they look in a conversation, I don't want to make it awkward for you, but I'm looking at you and I see a lot of different things going on. And
Mhm.
it's a normal effect. And at some point, as a coach, you start asking questions. Why are you looking down? Why are you looking up? What's happening? What's going on within you? And being interested in what's going on in that person. The fun thing is, and this is the piece that I love. It's your mirror image, because what's happening within you also happens within me. I might not even
Yes.
know, and you start recognizing these things. And
Uh-huh.
like saying hello to somebody is actually saying, "I see you.
Mhm.
I have seen you as a person." You could say as an entity or whatever, and something has created us, and I see you. And for that person, that could be a world of difference within one word. Well, hello, and that's that for me. That's spirituality. I don't
Yeah.
speak about any divine being or any or dogmas or anything like that. It is
Mhm.
pure
Mhm.
essence of the human being, because I
Yes.
love the human being, not the
Mhm.
human doing. There's a big difference between the two. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I was raised Christian, but the last couple of years I haven't been in church.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it is the being that prompts the doing that gives you the having,
Mhm.
isn't it, Nico?
That's right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and the reason why I shared those stories is to illustrate that you don't need to have necessarily all these degrees or credentials or accolades or social proof per se,
Mhm.
even, that people
Yeah.
talk about these days, before you start having impact on someone, before you start actually making a difference, before you start creating the ripple effect. Because it isn't so much about what you're doing, it's how you're being. That energy, that passion, that willingness to be able to foster a connection with someone, to see them. Because that's
Mhm.
something we all yearn for, is being seen and heard and also understood. And yet people want to be seen and heard, and they fear it at the same time, right? And
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
hiding their gifts and feeling some kind of shame or embarrassment that they don't have what they think they need to have in order to have success and impact and fulfillment and all of those
Mm.
things, operating in the lack and limitation, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned, uh, I'm 45 now. When I was
Hmm.
42, I think, like that. One of the things that I learned then was nobody's thinking about you. Nobody's actually thinking about you. Nobody's actually looking at what you're doing. Nobody actually cares. It's really so radical. But one of the analogies that I love is your neighbor is looking at your at his garden, thinking, "I need to clean up my garden because what would my neighbor think?" And the exact same person, as in me, I'm thinking, "I need to clean up my garden because what would my neighbor think?" I'm busy with myself and he's busy with himself, and nobody's cleaning up the garden. So it's a mess all over the place. But anyway, The point is, people don't think about, they're not thinking about someone else. They're thinking about themselves and how somebody else perceives them.
Yeah.
Once you break through that barrier
Hmm.
and you realize there is nobody actually is going to really be able to understand who you are and what you're doing, and even occupying themselves with that, you become a wider and more expansive being, because you're just going to be there instead of all that load on you, and impact and all that influence going on, because there's so many influences. And I think that modern age is a big issue there with all the scrolling and all that stuff that
Mm-hmm.
you know puts you off on these things. But that's something that I've learned. Don't worry about anybody else. Do your thing. Really do your
Yeah.
thing, and come out. Do the stuff. And that's where the impact is again. The circle of influence, circle of concern. You probably heard about that one as well, where
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
say around you exactly the short straw, that the people that you meet are the only people that you can impact. Not somebody in Palestine or Israel. Oh, I'm going politic. Oh, no, no, no. So I'm going to war zones, Ukraine. You cannot influence a person there. You can influence maybe somebody who's close to you and tell them, I will send something over there, as in food or money, to help people that are in need. You're impacting with the things that you can help. That's the circle of influence. You can't influence one person on the other side of the world and expect them to buy a piece of bread instead of a bullet. No, you can't. That's not possible. You
Hmm.
only have a limited amount of impact. And that's something that I've learned to reduce, because like you said, energy was, for me, was also so far away, and everybody was stealing it away from me. Nobody intentionally did it, but it was all going away. And once I've learned, do my thing, and I want to have impact really close by,
Hmm.
that makes it all worthwhile. And there are a lot of people out there that should, pick that up and say, okay, you know what? Fuck it all. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
I
And
love the expression.
Nico, what do you think is so valuable about having that impact? Why do you think people want to have impact?
Well, it is basically coming down to, why are you here? You're here
Mm,
to be I am, being pure being. But how can you be if nobody else sees that you are being? So you want to have impact on somebody so that they can also be. And then you have an influence on their being. And so it
mhm.
goes on and on and on. And what does it do for you? Well, you get a purpose. It comes
Yeah.
back in another way. You get it's like a money transaction. You give me services, I give you an amount of money in exchange, an amount of energy, because where does money come from? It is energy that I have spent, or time that I have spent, and energy that I've spent in a certain thing or a service that I gave, and that came into me, and that's a little piece of paper saying, I've done this service, and now I can, buy your service or get your energy and your time. And that's the same thing. It's a natural process. It
Mhm,
is, again, flow, but in a
mhm,
different way, where the flow goes between all the different entities that are there. And
mhm.
that's just so powerful, because there's a reason for being then. If there's no flow and you're all alone and there's nobody around you that you can be something for, it's a very miserable life. And
Mm.
that's one of the things that I love about, the book, which is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Oh, no, I
It's an
don't actually.
it's
Hmm.
really a small book, and it's pretty financially directed, but the idea behind it is, you give 1/10 of your income, so they call it one of your 10 breads, to somebody who needs,
Mm,
and it
mhm.
could be anybody, and you will get in return 10 times that bread, because you
Yes.
give. And that's
Mhm,
something that I also, that's what indeed is so important about the giving, and the influence and the impact.
yeah.
If you have a certain impact and you're doing it out of the best point, where is your heart really in the middle, it's gonna come back to you in a very positive
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I've known that and referred to it as tithing or prosperity consciousness, right? And
Nice.
elevating in that way. And also hearing that when we invest in our spiritual well-being, when we invest in bettering ourselves or humanity or the planet in some way, that too comes back to us tenfold,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? And yeah,
Absolutely.
it really speaks to that exchange of energy and love, like spreading the love around
Yes.
the quite often what comes through it intentionally that we want to spread throughout the world, I think.
So, Jennifer, what is one thing that you really want to bring out to the listeners today that you want to really leave behind that impact on their being today?
Hmm. Who you are makes a difference. And you are meant for this world. And so, with that, and then we're just really through that, freeing your spirit to direct the life you're meant to live. Don't let anyone try to take you down or constrict that, or that spirit is your essence, the core of who you truly are, the I that you're here to pass on. So lead with passion, lead with that, lead with who you are, and putting yourself first is putting yourself in a position of leadership. So be okay with that. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's very, 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 very deep, very nice, and very simple in essence. Just
Mhm.
accept who you are and be who you are, and more, you're enough. You are enough. It's as simple as that. But thank you
Mhm.
for that. Jennifer, if people are interested in following you or connecting with you in any way, where can they find you? And do you have any specific things going on that they can follow?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Most of it you can get through the gateway, my portal of the website, which is lightingthepath.ca. I just started a new group on LinkedIn. If you want to join the Conscious Leaders Collective, that's on there, and you can find me under Jennifer Regular. Probably just one. Well, it looks like this, and yeah, join the group. Love to have you. Love to be able to connect and just really support each other. And I think that really means a lot. New book coming out too, The Ultimate Guide to Leaving a Legacy. Myself and 21 other authors have wonderful stories and lessons we've learned along the way that can support and inspire you on your path of leadership. So you can check that out as well. That's like the new thing at the moment. So yeah, it's
Nice.
lightingthepath.ca. You'll find it all there.
Super, super. Thanks a lot for your time, Jennifer, and for your
Thank you.
inspirational words. There's a lot of stuff in there that I think a lot of our listeners are going to open up their eyes for.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been a real joy being here. I appreciate your time and your attention and being seen and heard. I really felt that. Thank you.
Great. And my mission here has been completed. Thank you again, Jennifer.
Thank
And for the listeners, remember to jump from your head to your heart and feel the beat within. Have a good one, everybody. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to the Everlasting Podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.